Hey everyone! Tonight we're stepping into one of the most profound and beautiful creation mythologies ever conceived. We're journeying to the very foundations of Middle-earth itself, to uncover the deep cosmological mysteries that even the Valar whisper about in the halls of Valinor. These are the kind of ancient secrets that have been hidden beneath layers of myth and legend for ages beyond counting, where the very nature of existence hangs in the balance between harmony and discord, creation and destruction. So before we begin this journey through the foundations of reality itself, take a moment to hit that like button if you're ready for tonight's deep dive into the origins of Tolkien's legendary world. And don't forget to subscribe if you enjoy these explorations into the deepest mysteries of Middle-earth. Drop a comment and let me know what part of the world you're listening from. I love seeing our global community of Middle-earth enthusiasts come together for these ancient tales. Now, get comfortable, maybe dim those lights, settle into your favorite spot, and let's begin our journey to the very moment when silence became song, when void became reality, when the first thought of Eru Ilvator stirred in the depths of the timeless halls. But first, let me tell you of something that happened long before the first elf awakened beneath the stars. Long before the first dwarf stirred in the halls of stone. Something that even Elrond in all his wisdom speaks of only in whispers, and that Galadriel, who dwelt in the Undying Lands, recalls with a mixture of wonder and unease. Picture, if you will, the deepest archive beneath Rivendell, where the most ancient texts are kept. Here, in a chamber that few have ever entered, there lies a manuscript written in letters of silver that seem to shimmer with their own inner light. The writing is in the old Tengwar script, but the words themselves are in a language that predates even Quenya, the ancient tongue of the Eldar. Master Elrond discovered this text during the final years of the Third Age, hidden within the binding of another book, as if someone had deliberately concealed it there. The manuscript speaks of the music of creation, the Ainur Lindala, but not as we know it from the tales that have been passed down through the ages. No, this version tells of something far more mysterious, far more troubling. It suggests that when the Ainur sang their great song in the presence of Eru Ilvator, they were not creating something new, but rather awakening something that had always existed, something that had been waiting in the depths of the void since before time began. The text describes a moment during the music when all the Ainur fell silent, not because the song had ended, but because they had heard something else. Another voice, neither of Eru nor of any of the Ainur, singing a melody that seemed to come from the very fabric of existence itself. Manwë, the Elder King, is said to have turned to his creator with eyes wide with wonder and perhaps fear, and asked a question that has echoed through the ages. "My lord, whose voice is this that sings with us?" And Eru's answer, according to this hidden text, was not words but a smile that held within it depths that even the mightiest of the Valar could not fathom. A smile that seemed to say that the music of creation was not the beginning of the story, but merely the first chapter of a tale that had been unfolding since before the concept of before had any meaning. The manuscript goes on to describe how Melkor's discord, which we have always understood as rebellion and corruption, might have been something else entirely. Something necessary. Something that had been planned from the very beginning, woven into the fundamental structure of creation itself. The text suggests that without Melkor's dark themes, the music would have been incomplete, that his discord was not the flaw in the song, but the very thing that made it perfect. But here is where the manuscript becomes truly unsettling. It speaks of other attempts, other songs sung in the halls of eternity before the one that created Middle-earth. Worlds that were sung into existence, and then, for reasons the text does not explain, allowed to fade back into the silence from which they came. The manuscript describes these previous creations as practice, as if Eru himself was learning, refining, perfecting the art of creation. And then, in the final pages, written in letters that seem to glow with an inner fire, the text makes a claim that would shake the very foundations of everything we thought we knew about the nature of good and evil, about the struggle between light and darkness that defines the history of Middle-earth. It claims that the music of creation never ended, that it continues still, playing through every living being, every choice made, every act of courage or cowardice, every moment of love or hatred. That we are not merely the products of the music, but active participants in its ongoing composition. The manuscript ends abruptly, as if the writer had been interrupted, or perhaps had realized that they were putting to parchment secrets that were never meant to be written. The last line, written in a hand that seems to tremble with either excitement or terror, reads, "The fourth theme remains unsung, waiting for those who would dare to listen for it in the spaces between the notes." Master Elrond sealed this manuscript away, and as far as we know, he never spoke of it to anyone. But sometimes, in the quiet hours of dawn, when the last light of Arundel's star fades before the coming of the sun, visitors to Rivendell report hearing a sound that seems to come from beneath the earth itself, a sound like singing, but not quite, a sound like music, but not quite, a sound that seems to be calling to something deep within the listener, inviting them to join in a song. That has been playing since the beginning of time. Tonight, we're going to explore these mysteries. We're going to journey back to the very moment when the music began, and perhaps discover what it truly means to be part of the eternal song that shapes all of existence. We're going to seek out the truth behind the creation theories that have been whispered in the halls of Valinor, debated in the libraries of Gondor, and pondered in the depths of Moria before its fall. The journey begins now, in the silence before the first note, in the darkness before the first light, in the void, before the first word of power was spoken. Close your eyes, let your breathing slow, and prepare to witness the birth of reality itself. For tonight, we return to the timeless halls, to the moment when Ainur Ilúvatar first conceived of the music that would become Middle-earth. And perhaps, if we listen carefully enough, we might just hear the fourth theme beginning to play, before we can understand the true nature of the music of creation. We must first journey to where it all began, to a place that exists beyond the boundaries of time and space as we know them. The timeless halls where Ainur Ilúvatar dwells in eternal contemplation are not a location in any sense that mortal minds can truly comprehend. They are the foundation upon which all reality rests, the cosmic stage where the greatest symphony ever conceived would first be performed, that you find yourself standing at the threshold of existence itself. In that moment before moments, when the concept of before and after had no meaning. The halls stretch infinitely in all directions, yet somehow feel intimate, as if they were designed for the most sacred of gatherings. The very air, if it can be called air, thrums with potential, with the promise of wonders yet to be born. Here, in this space between spaces, the mind of Ainur Ilúvatar stirs with the first inklings of creation. Around you, the Ainur begin to gather. These are the holy ones, the offspring of Eru's thought, each one a unique expression of his divine nature. They come not walking, but simply appearing, as if they had always been there, waiting for this moment. Their forms are magnificent beyond description, beings of pure spirit clothed in radiance that shifts and changes like music made visible. Each one carries within them a particular aspect of the divine nature, a specific note in the great chord of existence that is about to be struck. Manwë arrives first, as befits the elder king. His presence fills the space with the feeling of vast skies and endless horizons. When he moves, you can almost hear the whisper of wind across mountain peaks, the cry of eagles soaring through cloudless heavens. His eyes hold the depth of the firmament itself, and in them you see reflected the wisdom that will one day guide the affairs of Middle-earth from the peak of Tanaquetil. Beside him materializes Olmo, the Lord of Waters, whose very essence speaks of depths unfathomed and currents that flow through all things. His form seems to shift like water itself, sometimes appearing as a mighty king robed in foam and spray, sometimes as a presence that fills the entire hall with the sound of waves, breaking on shores that do not yet exist. In his bearing, you sense the future music of all the rivers and seas that will one day flow through the world. Then comes Ollie the smith, his spirit radiating the satisfaction of creation through craft and skill. Though the concept of matter does not yet exist, you can feel in his presence the future ringing of hammers on anvils, the joy of shaping raw materials into things of beauty and purpose. His eyes hold the glint of precious metals and the steady glow of forges that will one day illuminate the halls of Khazad-dûm. Yavanna appears like the promise of spring itself, her presence bringing with it the essence of all growing things. In her, you perceive the future rustling of leaves in forests yet to be planted, the gentle unfurling of flowers that will bloom in gardens not yet dreamed. Her radiance carries the warmth of summer sunlight and the rich scent of earth ready for the seed. One by one, the other Ainur gather in the timeless halls. There is Varda, who will one day kindle the stars and whose light will be a beacon of hope in the darkest hours. Mandos appears, stern and compassionate, bearing within his spirit the weight of all the stories that will ever be told, all the fates that will ever be woven. Nienna comes wreathed in a sorrow that is not despair, but rather the deep sadness that makes joy possible, the grief that teaches the value of what is precious. And then, standing somewhat apart from the others, is Melkor. Even here in this moment, before the first note of creation, there is something different about him. His power is undeniable, perhaps the greatest among all the Ainur save Manwë alone, but there is a restlessness in his spirit, a hunger that seems to go beyond the bounds of what the others feel. His light burns brighter and fiercer than the might rest, but in its intensity, there are shadows that dance in ways that make you uneasy. Yet as you observe him in this moment before the music begins, you realize that even his restlessness serves a purpose. The manuscript in Rivendell was right to suggest that Melkor's nature was not an accident, not a flaw in Iru's design. In his fierce independence, in his desire to create according to his own will rather than in harmony with others, there is something that the music will need. Without the tension he brings, the song would be beautiful but incomplete, perfect but somehow lacking the depth that only comes from the struggle between opposing forces. Iru himself remains beyond your direct perception, not because he is absent, but because his presence is so fundamental to everything around you, that it is like trying to see the very light by which you see. You sense him in the structure of the halls themselves, in the way the Ainur naturally arrange themselves, in the profound silence that holds infinite potential. When he speaks, it is not with words, but with a communication that bypasses language entirely, going straight to the heart of understanding. The moment approaches when the music will begin. But first, Iru shares with the Ainur a vision of what their song will accomplish. Not the details, for much will be left to their own creativity and interpretation, but the broad themes that will guide their composition. They see visions of a world of substance and form, of creatures that will walk upon solid ground beneath an actual sky. They glimpse the concepts of time and space, of growth and decay, of the complex interplay between order and chaos that will define the world they are about to create. But even as these visions dance before their consciousness, you begin to sense that there is more to this moment than meets the eye. The Ainur are receiving their theme, yes, but you get the distinct impression that they are not the only audience for Iru's communication. Something else is listening, something that has been waiting in the depths of the void since before the concept of waiting had meaning. The silence in the timeless halls becomes pregnant with possibility. The Ainur take their positions not in any physical sense, but in the cosmic arrangement that will allow their individual voices to blend into the greatest symphony ever conceived. Each one prepares to contribute their unique part to the music, to add their voice to the choir that will sing a world into existence. Manwë raises what might be called a hand, if such terms had meaning in this place, beyond place, ready to conduct the opening notes. Ulmo's presence deepens, like the ocean gathering itself for a great wave. Ollie seems to solidify slightly, as if preparing to give form to the formless. Yavanna's radiance takes on the quality of dawn light, full of promise and new beginnings, and Melkor, standing apart from the others, prepares to add his voice to the choir. But in his preparation, there is something that the others do not perceive. His theme, the discord that will drive the music forward, is not something he has invented himself. It is something that has been whispered to him from the depths of the void, a melody that existed before the Ainur, before the timeless halls, before even the thought of creation first stirred in the mind of Eru. The moment of the music's beginning approaches, and with it, the birth of everything that will ever be. But as you stand witness to this cosmic event, you cannot shake the feeling that you are not seeing the true beginning of the story, but rather the first chapter of a tale that started long before this moment, in the depths of mysteries that even Eru himself has not fully revealed. The fourth theme stirs in the silence, waiting for its moment to join the eternal song. The moment has arrived. Eru Ilvatar gives the signal, and the great music begins. The first note that emerges from the assembled Ainur is unlike anything that has ever existed before, because before this moment, sound itself did not exist. It is pure creation, the birth of harmony from silence, and it reverberates through the timeless halls with a power that seems to shake the very foundations of reality. But this is not destruction, it is the opposite. It is the sound of existence itself coming into being. Manwë's voice rises first, clear and strong like the vive, winged across vast spaces. His theme speaks of freedom, of movement, of the sky that will one day arch over all the world. In his melody, you can hear the future songs of birds, the whisper of breezes through leaves, the mighty roar of storms that will cleanse and renew the earth. His music creates space itself, the vast expanses in which all other things will find their place. Ulmo's voice joins in, deep and flowing like the current of a great river. His theme weaves through Man's melody, adding depth and continuity. Where Manwë's music creates space, Ulmo's creates flow, the movement of time itself. His notes speak of patience and persistence, of the power that shapes mountains through the simple act of moving water against stone. In his harmony, you hear the future sound of rain on thirsty earth, of waves breaking on shores, of the great sea that will embrace all the lands of Middle-earth. Ollie adds his voice to the growing symphony, and his theme brings the concept of substance, of matter that can be shaped and formed. His music has a different quality from the others, more structured, more deliberate. It speaks of creation through craft, of the joy that comes from taking raw materials and transforming them into something beautiful and useful. His harmony resonates with the future ringing of hammers, the satisfaction of work well done, the pride of the craftsman in his creation. Yavanna's voice blooms like a flower opening to the sun, bringing with it the theme of growth and life. Her melody dances around the others, adding beauty and complexity to their harmonies. She sings of the potential for life that lies dormant in all things, waiting for the right moment to burst forth in glorious abundance. Her music carries the promise of forests and gardens, of the endless cycle of seasons that will mark the passage of time in the world to come. One by one, the other Ainur add their voices to the growing symphony. Varda's theme sparkles like starlight, bringing the promise of light in darkness, of guidance for those who are lost. Mandos adds his voice with solemn beauty, singing of the stories that will be told, the fates that will be woven, the great tapestry of existence that will record every deed and every word. Nienna's contribution is bittersweet, a melody that speaks of the necessity of loss, of the way that sorrow makes joy possible. The music grows in complexity and beauty, each voice adding its own unique contribution while harmonizing perfectly with all the others. The timeless halls resonate with the sound of creation itself, and in that resonance, you begin to see the world taking shape. Not physically, not yet, but as a vision that grows clearer with each note sung. You see vast continents rising from primordial seas, mountain ranges thrusting up toward skies that have never known clouds. You witness the birth of the first forests, the carving of the first river valleys, the establishment of the great patterns that will govern the world for ages to come. The music is not just describing these things, it is actually bringing them into being, note by note, harmony by harmony. But then, as the music reaches its first great crescendo, something changes. A new voice joins the choir, but it is not in harmony with the others. Melkor begins to sing his own theme, one that clashes with the established melodies, creating discord where there had been perfect harmony. At first, the other Ainur are confused rather than alarmed. They had expected that each would contribute their own unique voice to the symphony, but Melkor's theme seems designed not to complement theirs, but to compete with them. His music is powerful and beautiful in its own right, but it fights against the established patterns, creating tensions and conflicts that had not existed before. In the vision of the world that grows before you, these tensions manifest as upheavals and catastrophes. Where the other Ainur had sung of gentle hills, Melkor's discord creates jagged peaks and deep chasms. Where they had envisioned peaceful valleys, his theme carves out desolate wastelands. The beautiful patterns they had established are broken and reformed, creating a world that is more complex and dangerous than what they had originally planned. Some of the Ainur begin to falter in their singing, uncertain how to respond to this unexpected challenge. Should they try to overcome Melkor's discord by singing louder? Should they change their own themes to accommodate his? The harmony begins to fragment as each singer struggles to decide how to proceed. But then, something remarkable happens. Eru himself begins to smile, and in that smile, you sense approval rather than disapproval. The discord that seemed so destructive is actually serving a purpose that none of the Ainur had anticipated. The tensions created by Melkor's theme are not destroying the music. They are making it richer, more complex, more beautiful than it ever could have been without them. You begin to understand that the Tika manuscript in Rivendell was hinting at a truth that goes to the very heart of creation itself. The discord was not an accident or a rebellion, it was part of the plan from the beginning. The music needed that element of conflict, that tension between opposing forces, to achieve its full potential. The other Ainur, seeing Eru's response, begin to adapt their singing to incorporate Melkor's discord rather than fight against it. They discover that by allowing his theme to weave through theirs, they can create harmonies that are far more sophisticated and moving than anything they had achieved before. The music becomes a true symphony, with themes and variations, with conflicts and resolutions, with the kind of depth and complexity that can only come from the interplay of opposing forces. In the vision of the world, you see how this musical evolution translates into physical reality. The upheavals caused by Melkor's discord create valleys where rivers can flow, providing water for the growing things that Yavanna sings into existence. The jagged peaks he creates become the foundations for Alu's great halls and fortresses. The desolate places he carves out become the spaces where courage and determination can be tested and proven. But even as you marvel at the beauty and complexity of the music, you become aware that something else is happening. The voice that Melkor heard in the void, the one that gave him his theme of discord, is still present. It is not singing along with the Ainur, but it is listening, and in its listening, it is somehow influencing the music itself. This presence in the void is ancient, beyond measure, older than the Ainur, older perhaps than Eru himself. It is the source of the fourth theme that the manuscript mentioned, the melody that remains unsung but which underlies all the others. It is patient and watchful, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself fully. The music continues to grow in beauty and complexity, But now you understand that what you are witnessing is not just the creation of a world, but the opening movement of a symphony that will continue to play long after the last note has been sung in the timeless halls. The music of creation is not a finished work, but a living, breathing composition that will evolve and change as long as there are voices to sing it. The true journey of discovery is just beginning. As the great music reaches its first climactic moment, Eru raises his hand, and the symphony falls silent. The sudden absence of sound is more profound than the silence that existed before the music began. For now there is the memory of harmony, the echo of creation itself still reverberating through the timeless halls. The Ainur stand in wonder, their spirits still vibrating with the melodies they have sung, but uncertain what comes next. Then Eru speaks, and his words carry the weight of absolute authority. Behold your music. This is your minstrelsy, and each of you shall find contained herein, amid the design that I set before you, all those things which it may seem that he himself devised or added. And thou, Melkor, shalt see that no theme may be played that hath not its uttermost source in me. With these words, he shows them a vision. The timeless halls fade around you, and suddenly you are witnessing the birth of the physical universe itself. The music has become reality, and what had existed only as harmony and melody now takes on substance and form. This is the world. That is, the universe of matter and energy, time and space. You watch in awe as the vision unfolds before you. Vast expanses of void fill with light as the first stars ignite, their nuclear fires kindled by the melodies the Ainur sang. Galaxies wheel through space in patterns that echo the harmonies of Manwë Varda. Great clouds of gas and dust swirl and coalesce, following the themes that Ulmo wove through the music. The very laws of physics themselves are manifestations of the mathematical relationships that existed between the different musical themes. But it is not just the grand cosmic structures that capture your attention. As the vision zooms in, you see the formation of individual worlds, each one a unique interpretation of the music. Some are water worlds where Ulmo's themes dominated. Others are desert planets where the interplay between different melodies created vastly different environments. Each world is a masterpiece in its own right, a complete expression of some aspect of the great music. Then the vision focuses on one particular world, and you recognize it immediately. This is Arda, the Earth, the world that will one day be home to elves and men, dwarves and hobbits. But this is Arda as it was in the beginning, before the shaping of the Valar, before the creation of the two lamps, even before the establishment of the foundations of the earth. What you see is both beautiful and terrible. The world is a sphere of molten rock and metal, wreathed in poisonous gases, and bombarded by asteroids and comets. Vast volcanic eruptions reshape the surface constantly, and the heat is so intense that water cannot exist in liquid form. This is the result of Melkor's discord woven through the music, but you begin to understand that even this apparent chaos serves a purpose. The violent processes shaping the young world are not destructive but creative. The volcanic activity is bringing valuable minerals to the surface. The bombardment from space is delivering water and organic compounds that will one day be essential for life. The intense heat is driving chemical reactions that would be impossible under gentler conditions. Melkor's discord, rather than ruining the music, has created the dynamic tensions that will make complex development possible. But there is something else in the vision that troubles you. As you watch the formation of Arda, you become aware of patterns that seem too deliberate to be accidental. The positioning of the continents, the distribution of mineral resources, the location of future mountain ranges, all of these seem to follow a design that goes beyond what the Ainur sang in their music. It is as if someone or something else has been influencing the formation of the world, adding subtle modifications to the original musical themes. These changes are so small and so skillfully integrated that they almost escape notice, but once you begin to see them, they are unmistakable. The mysterious voice from the void, the one that whispered Melkor's theme to him, has been at work. Here as well, you begin to notice other anomalies in the vision. Certain geographical features that will one day be crucial to the history of Middle-earth seem to have been deliberately positioned. The location where Valinor will be established, the site of future Gondolin, the placement of the Lonely Mountain. With its vast treasure, all of these appear to have been influenced by this hidden hand. More disturbing still, you begin to see signs that this is not the first time such a world has been created. Deep beneath the surface of the young Arda, buried, under layers of molten rock, are the remnants of previous geological structures. These are not the result of normal planetary formation processes, but rather the fossilized remains of earlier attempts at world building. The manuscript in Rivendell was right. There were other songs, other attempts at creation, before the music, that created Middle-earth. These previous worlds were not destroyed or abandoned, but rather served as foundations for the current creation. Each attempt built upon the lessons learned from the previous ones, incorporating new elements and refining the design. But why were multiple attempts necessary? The answer becomes clear as you observe the incredible complexity of what is being created. The Ainur sang their music with the best of intentions, but they were working from themes and concepts provided by Eru. They did not fully understand the long-term implications of their harmonies, the way that seemingly simple melodies would interact over vast spans of time to create incredibly complex results. Each previous attempt had revealed new challenges, new problems that needed to be solved. The interaction between different types of matter, the development of stable weather patterns, the creation of conditions suitable for life, all of these required countless adjustments and refinements. The music that created Middle-earth represents the culmination of this process, a composition that has been perfected through multiple iterations. Yet even as you marvel at this revelation, you realize that it raises as many questions as it answers. If Eru is truly omniscient, why was trial and error necessary? If the Ainur are expressions of his divine nature, why did they need to learn through experience? And most puzzling of all, what role does the mysterious voice from the void play in this cosmic creative process? The vision begins to shift, moving forward in time to show the next phase of creation. The molten surface of Arda begins to cool, and the first oceans form as water vapor condenses out of the atmosphere. The Valar themselves begin to descend from the timeless halls, to take up residence on the world they helped to create, beginning the long process of shaping it into a home suitable for the children of Ilvatar. But before this next phase of the story unfolds, you catch one final glimpse of something that makes your spirit tremble with anticipation and dread. Deep in the vision of the cooling world, in the spaces between the geological layers, in the quantum fluctuations of matter itself, you sense the presence of the fourth theme beginning to stir. This is the theme that was not sung by any of the Ainur, the melody that existed in the music, but was never given voice. It has been waiting, patient and watchful, through all the ages of creation, and now, as the world prepares to receive its first inhabitants, it begins to move. The true mystery of creation is about to reveal itself, and you understand that everything you have witnessed so far has been merely the prelude to a far greater and more complex symphony. The music of creation continues, but now you know that the most important movements are yet to come. The Valar descend to Arda with hearts full of purpose and wonder, ready to shape the world according to the vision they witnessed in the timeless halls. As they take physical form for the first time, binding themselves to the material realm, they begin the great work of preparing the world for the coming of the children of Ilvatar. Yet even in these early days of their labor, patterns emerge that suggest the music was more complex than any of them initially understood. Man establishes himself upon the highest peak, which will one day be called Tanaketal, and from there, he surveys the whole of Arda. His vision encompasses not just the physical landscape spread below, but the currents of fate and possibility that flow through all things. It is from this vantage point that he first begins to notice the subtle wrongness in the world's formation, the slight deviations from what the music should have produced. The patterns are so subtle that at first he dismisses them as variations within the acceptable range of creative interpretation. After all, the music was meant to be translated into physical reality through the will and understanding of the Ainur, and some variation was not only expected but desired. Yet as he studies the world more carefully, he realizes that these deviations follow a pattern of their own, one that seems to serve purposes that were never explicitly included in the original themes. Ulmo, dwelling in the deepest places of the ocean, makes similar discoveries. The flow patterns of the great currents, the distribution of mineral deposits on the ocean floor, the precise chemical composition of the seas themselves, all show signs of adjustment beyond what the music originally specified. These changes are not random but purposeful, as if someone with vast knowledge of future events has been fine-tuning the world's development. When the Valar gather in council to discuss their observations, they find that each has encountered similar anomalies in their own domains. Ollie speaks of ore deposits that appear in locations where they were not originally planned, but where they will be most needed by future inhabitants. Yavanna describes soil compositions that have been subtly altered to support plant life that was never explicitly sung into the music. Even Mandos, keeper of fate itself, admits to finding story threads that seem to originate from sources outside the original composition. The most troubling discovery comes from Varda, whose keen eyes perceive patterns of light and energy that extend far beyond the visible spectrum. She has detected what can only be described as resonances, echoes of other musics that seem to be playing simultaneously with their own. These phantom melodies are so faint that they can barely be perceived, yet their influence on the development of Arda is undeniable. At first, the Valar assume that these mysterious influences must be the work of Eru himself, additional themes that he chose not to reveal during the original music. This explanation satisfies them for a time, and they continue their work of shaping the world, adapting their efforts to accommodate these hidden melodies. They create the two lamps to bring light to Middle-earth, establish the great forests and mountain ranges, and begin the delicate work of preparing conditions suitable for life. But as the ages pass and their work progresses, it becomes increasingly clear that something more complex is happening. The hidden influences are not static additions to the original design, but dynamic forces that continue to evolve and change. They respond to the Valar's own efforts, adjusting and counter-adjusting in ways that suggest not just intelligence, active collaboration in the creative process. Ulmo is the first to voice the suspicion that troubles them all. During a gathering in the halls of Manwë, he speaks of currents that flow against all natural law, carrying messages and influences across vast distances. These currents seem to operate according to principles that predate the music itself, as if they are part of some older system of cosmic organization that the music was overlaid upon rather than replacing. The revelation that shakes the very foundations of their understanding comes when Nienna, in her wanderings through the darker corners of Arda, discovers physical evidence of the previous creations that were hinted at in the vision. Deep beneath the surface, in caverns that should not exist according to any geological process they understand, she finds structures that could only have been created by intelligence. These are not ruins in any conventional sense, but rather crystalline formations that preserve echoes of ancient musics within their molecular structure. When the other Valar examine these discoveries, they realize they are looking at the fossilized remains of earlier attempts at world building. But these previous creations were not failures that were discarded, as they had assumed. Instead, they were deliberately incorporated into the foundation of the current world, their accumulated wisdom and experience built into the very bedrock of Arda. This discovery forces them to completely reconsider their understanding of the Creative process. The music of the Ainur was not the beginning of creation, but rather the latest movement in a symphony that had been playing for unimaginable ages. Each previous attempt had added new layers of complexity and understanding, building toward the current creation that was designed to be the culmination of this vast experimental process. But if this is true, then the role of the Valar themselves becomes more ambiguous. Are they the primary architects of Arda, as they had believed, or are they merely the latest in a series of collaborators in a project that extends far beyond their individual contributions? And if the latter is true, who or what is the true architect of this cosmic symphony? The answer begins to emerge when Mandos, delving deep into the patterns of fate that govern all things, discovers what can only be described as pre-existing story structures. These are narrative frameworks that were already present in the foundations of reality before the music began, templates that guided the development of themes and characters in ways that none of the Ainur consciously planned. These pre-existing structures explain many of the puzzling aspects of Arda's development. The way that seemingly random events conspire to produce meaningful outcomes, the tendency for individual choices to align with larger patterns of destiny, the recurring themes that echo through different ages and cultures. All of these can be understood as manifestations of these deeper narrative frameworks. Yet even this revelation raises more questions than it answers. Who or what created these foundational story structures? How long have they been in place? And most importantly, what is their ultimate purpose? The Valar find themselves confronting the possibility that they are not the authors of Middle-earth story, but rather characters within a narrative that was conceived by intelligences far greater and more ancient than themselves. As they grapple with these profound questions, the work of shaping Arda continues. But now their efforts are informed by a growing awareness that they are participating in something far more complex and mysterious than they had originally understood. Every decision they make, every change they implement, becomes part of an ongoing experiment in the nature of creation itself. The hidden hand that has been guiding the development of Arda begins to reveal itself more clearly through these accumulated revelations. It is not malevolent as they had feared it might be, but neither is it entirely benevolent in any sense they can understand. It is something altogether more alien and incomprehensible, a force that operates according to principles that transcend their categories of good and evil, order and chaos, creation and destruction. This force has been present since before the beginning, waiting patiently for the right moment to reveal its true nature and purpose. As the world approaches readiness for the awakening of the children of Elvader, that moment draws ever closer. The work of the Valar continues across the vast ages, but their understanding of their role has been fundamentally transformed by the revelations about the deeper structures underlying creation. As they shape mountains and carve rivers, as they kindle stars and nurture the first stirrings of life, they do so with the growing awareness that they are not the primary authors of Arda's story, but rather participants in a grander design that extends far beyond their comprehension. It is during this period of profound questioning that they make a discovery that will change everything. Deep beneath the foundations of what will one day become Valinor, Ollie uncovers a chamber that should not exist according to any laws of geology or architecture they understand. The chamber appears to be far older than Arda itself, yet it is somehow perfectly preserved, as if time has no power within its walls. The chamber is filled with crystalline structures that pulse with a soft, rhythmic light. As the Valar examine these formations more closely, they realize that the crystals are not merely objects, but rather storage devices of unimaginable sophistication. Each crystal contains vast libraries of information, recorded not in any written language, but in pure, harmonic frequencies that resonate directly with the consciousness of those who approach them. When Manwë first touches one of these crystal archives, he is overwhelmed by a flood of images and sensations. He sees the history of countless worlds, each one a variation on the themes of creation. each one an experiment in the possibilities of existence. Some of these worlds flourished for eons before reaching natural conclusions, their stories complete and perfect in their own way. Others faced catastrophic challenges that tested the very limits of what life and consciousness could endure. But it is not just the diversity of these previous creations that astounds him. It is the realization that they were all connected, all part of a single vast project that has been unfolding across unimaginable spans of time. Each world built upon the lessons learned from its predecessors, incorporating new elements and refining the fundamental structures of reality itself. Olmo examines crystals that contain the accumulated wisdom of beings who mastered the manipulation of time and space in ways that make the powers of the Valar seem primitive by comparison. These ancient intelligences learn to weave reality like a tapestry, adjusting the fundamental constants of physics to create conditions suitable for forms of life and consciousness that the current universe could not support. Yavanna discovers records of biological experiments that span millions of years, careful breeding programs that gradually develop the capacity for souls to inhabit physical forms. The creation of bodies capable of housing eternal spirits was not accomplished overnight, but required countless iterations and refinements, each generation building upon the successes and failures of those who came before. The most disturbing discovery comes when Varda examines crystals that contain what can only be described as theological research. These records show that the question of divine authority, of who or what has the right to create and shape reality, has been a subject of intense investigation and experimentation across multiple cosmic cycles. The relationship between creator and created, between the one who designs and those who inhabit the design, has been explored through countless variations and permutations. Some of these previous experiments involved creators who remained completely hidden from their creations, allowing them to develop in complete ignorance of their design nature. Others featured active divine intervention at every level, with creators who guided every aspect of their world's development. Still others explored the possibilities of collaborative creation, where the created beings gradually became co-creators in their own reality. As the Valar study these records, they begin to understand that their own situation represents yet another variation in this vast experimental program. They are creators who are also created, designers who are also part of someone else's design. The music of the Ainur was both their own creative work and their response to themes provided by an intelligence they assumed was their ultimate creator. But the Crystal Archive suggests that even Eru Ilvatar may not be the final authority in this cosmic hierarchy. The records speak of cycles within cycles, of creators who are themselves the creations of still greater intelligences, ascending through levels of reality that stretch beyond any finite comprehension. This revelation, initially, fills the Valar with a profound sense of vertigo and uncertainty. If they cannot be sure of the ultimate source of their own existence and purpose, how can they proceed with confidence in their work of shaping Arda? How can they make decisions about the welfare of future beings when they themselves may be nothing more than characters in someone else's story? It is Nienna who provides the insight that allows them to move forward despite these overwhelming uncertainties. She points out that regardless of the ultimate nature of their situation, the suffering and joy of conscious beings remains real and meaningful. Whether they are the primary creators or merely links in an infinite chain of creation, their responsibility to act with wisdom and compassion remains unchanged. Moreover, she argues, the very fact that they are capable of questioning their own nature and purpose suggests that they possess genuine agency within whatever larger design encompasses them. They are not mere puppets following a predetermined script, but conscious participants in an ongoing creative process that depends upon their choices and actions. This perspective allows the Valar to continue their work with renewed purpose, even as they grapple with the implications of what they have discovered. They begin to see their role not as the completion of a fixed design, but as contributors to an ever-evolving experiment in the possibilities of existence. The crystal archives also provide practical guidance for their work. They learn techniques for stabilizing the fundamental forces of reality, methods for creating sustainable ecosystems that can support complex life forms, and principles for designing social and cultural structures that will allow conscious beings to flourish. But perhaps most importantly, they learn about the delicate balance required to create beings with genuine free will. The archives contain detailed studies of previous attempts to create truly autonomous consciousness, many of which ended in failure because the balance between guidance and freedom was not properly maintained. Some worlds fell into chaos because their inhabitants were given too much freedom without sufficient understanding of the consequences of their choices. Others stagnated because their creators maintained too much control, preventing their creations from developing genuine independence and creativity. The successful examples share certain common characteristics. They feature creators who provide initial guidance and structure, but then gradually withdraw to allow their creations to develop their own cultures and values. They include built-in mechanisms for learning from mistakes without allowing those mistakes to cause irreparable harm. Most importantly, they are designed to evolve and change over time, adapting to the needs and desires of their inhabitants, rather than forcing those inhabitants to conform to a static ideal. As the Valar apply these lessons to their work on Arda, they begin to understand why the mysterious influences they had detected earlier were so subtle and carefully integrated. The hidden hand guiding Arda's development is following principles learned through eons of experimentation, making adjustments that will create the optimal conditions for the flourishing of conscious life without compromising the genuine autonomy of that life. The time approaches when the first children of Ilúvatar will awaken upon Arda, and the Valar prepare for this momentous event with a deep appreciation for the complexity and responsibility of what they are about to witness. They know now that they are not just creating a world, but participating in an ongoing experiment in the fundamental nature of consciousness, free will, and the relationship between creator and created. The fourth theme, which has been waiting so patiently in the spaces between the notes of the music, begins to stir more actively as the moment of awakening approaches. The awakening of the firstborn marks a turning point not just in the history of Arda, but in the cosmic experiment that has been unfolding across countless ages. As the first elves open their eyes beneath the starlight at Cuivianen, they do so not as mere products of the music of creation, but as the culmination of eons of careful preparation and refinement. Yet even the Valar, with all their newfound understanding of the deeper structures of reality, are unprepared for what their creation will reveal about the true nature of consciousness and free will. The elves, who wake by the shores of the lake, carry within them something that transcends the purely physical realm. Their spirits are not simply extensions of the music that created them, but independent centers of consciousness capable of their own creative acts. When they speak their first words, name their first objects, sing their first songs, they are not merely following predetermined patterns, but actively participating in the ongoing creation of reality itself. Oromo, hunting in the forests near Cuivianen, is the first of the Valar to encounter these newly awakened beings. What strikes him most powerfully is not their beauty or their grace, remarkable though these qualities are, but rather the way they seem to perceive aspects of reality that had been invisible even to him. They see patterns in the movement of leaves, hear harmonies in the flow of water, sense connections between seemingly disparate elements of the natural world that reveal a deeper order underlying all things. When Oromo reports his encounter to the other Valar, they realize that the elves are not simply inhabitants of Arda, but active participants in its ongoing development. Each choice they make, each word they speak, each song they sing adds new layers of meaning and complexity to the world around them. They are not passive recipients of creation, but co-creators in the truest sense. This realization forces the Valar to confront a profound question that the Crystal Archives had only hinted at. If the elves possess genuine creative power, if their consciousness can actively shape reality, then what is the relationship between their will and the larger design that encompasses them? Are they free to develop in any direction they choose, or are there hidden constraints that will ultimately guide their development along predetermined paths? The answer begins to emerge as the Valar observe the early development of Elvish culture. The elves display an instinctive understanding of principles that the elves display an instinctive understanding of principles that the Valar themselves had to learn through study of the ancient archives. They organize themselves into communities that balance individual freedom with collective responsibility. They develop technologies that work in harmony with natural systems, rather than dominating or exploiting them. They create art forms that seem to tap directly into the fundamental structures of reality itself, yet their development is not uniform or predictable. Different groups of elves, even those who awaken in the same location under identical conditions, begin to diverge almost immediately. Some are drawn to the mastery of physical crafts, others to the exploration of spiritual mysteries. Some seek to understand the world through careful observation and analysis, others through intuitive communion with the forces of nature. This diversity appears to be not a flaw in the design, but rather its greatest strength. The Crystal Archives had suggested that consciousness requires variation and unpredictability to reach its full potential. A perfectly ordered creation might be beautiful and harmonious, but it would lack the dynamic tension necessary for genuine growth and development. The Valar begin to understand that their role in relation to the elves is neither to control nor to abandon them, but rather to provide a stable foundation that will support whatever directions their development might take. They continue their work of shaping Arda, but now with the awareness that they are creating not a finished world, but rather a stage upon which the real drama of creation will unfold. This perspective is put to its first major test when some of the elves begin to develop abilities that seem to transcend the normal limitations of physical existence. They learn to communicate across vast distances without any apparent medium, to perceive events that are happening far from their location, to influence the behavior of natural systems through what can only be described as acts of will. These developments alarm some of the Valar, who worry that the elves are exceeding the bounds of what was intended for them. But consultation with the Crystal Archives reveals that such abilities are not anomalous, but rather the natural result of consciousness reaching a certain level of sophistication and integration with its environment. The archives contain records of previous civilizations that developed similar capabilities, and they show that such abilities can lead either to transcendent wisdom or to destructive hubris, depending upon how they are understood and employed. The key factor appears to be whether those who possess such powers see them as tools for domination, or as responsibilities that come with deeper understanding of the interconnectedness of all things. The elves, remarkably, seem to instinctively grasp this distinction. Those who develop enhanced abilities do not use them to assert dominance over others, but rather to deepen their understanding of the world and to serve the well-being of their communities. They recognize that their powers are not personal possessions, but rather expressions of their connection to the larger patterns of reality. This mature response to enhanced capabilities suggests that the elves possess an inherent wisdom that goes beyond what their brief existence would normally allow. Some of the Valar begin to suspect that the spirits of the elves may not be entirely new creations, but rather ancient consciousness that have been waiting for suitable physical forms to inhabit. This suspicion is confirmed when Mando's keeper of the Halls of the Dead reports that the spirits of elves who die do not behave like newly created souls. Instead, they display a familiarity with the structures of his realm that suggests prior experience. When questioned, These spirits speak of memories that seem to predate their physical existence, though these memories are vague and fragmentary, like half-remembered dreams. The implications of this discovery are staggering. If the elves possess souls that existed before their physical awakening, then their creation represents not the birth of new consciousness, but rather the return of ancient spirits to embodied existence. This would explain their instinctive wisdom, their natural harmony with the deeper structures of reality, and their ability to develop transcendent capabilities so quickly. But it also raises profound questions about the nature of the cosmic experiment they are all participating in. If consciousness can persist across multiple incarnations, across different physical forms, and even different worlds, then the scope of the project becomes almost unimaginably vast. The awakening of the elves may represent not the beginning of their story, but rather the latest chapter in narratives that span multiple cosmic cycles. The Valar realize that they are witnessing something unprecedented in their experience. The elves are not simply the first inhabitants of Arda, but rather the return of consciousness to a world that has been prepared to support forms of existence that transcend the normal boundaries between spirit and matter, between creator and created, between individual and universal. As they observe the continuing development of elvish civilization, the Valar become aware that they are not just watching the growth of a new culture, but participating in the next phase of an experiment that will ultimately determine the future direction of consciousness itself. The time is approaching when the second children of Ilvator will awaken, and the Valar wonder what new revelations their creation will bring. The patterns they have observed suggest that each new form of consciousness introduces capabilities and perspectives that were impossible before, pushing the boundaries of what existence itself can encompass. The fourth theme grows stronger, its influence more apparent in the subtle synchronicities that guide the development of both elves and the world around them. The awakening of men brings with it a revelation that shakes the very foundations of everything the Valar thought they understood about the nature of creation. Unlike the elves, whose spirits seem to carry ancient wisdom from previous existences, men awaken with souls that are genuinely new, unburdened by any memory of prior incarnation. Yet this apparent limitation proves to be their greatest strength, for it grants them something that neither elves nor Valar possess: the ability to transcend the patterns that have governed existence since the beginning of time. Ollie is the first to notice the fundamental difference in how men interact with the physical world. Where elves work in harmony with existing natural systems, men display an instinctive drive to reshape their environment according to their own vision. They do not simply accept the world as they find it, but constantly seek to improve it, to make it more suitable for their needs and desires. This tendency initially alarms the Valar, who see it as a form of discord that might disrupt the careful balance they have worked so hard to establish. But as they observe men more closely, the Valar begin to understand that this drive to reshape the world is not mere destructiveness, but rather a new form of creativity. Men possess the ability to envision possibilities that do not yet exist and then work to bring those possibilities into reality. They are not bound by the constraints of existing patterns, but can create entirely new forms of order and beauty. This capability becomes evident in the technologies that men develop, while elves create tools and structures that work in harmony with natural forces. Men create innovations that transcend the limitations of the natural world. They harness fire not just for warmth and cooking, but as a means of reshaping materials in ways that nature alone could never accomplish. They develop agriculture that produces more food than natural ecosystems could support. They create forms of art and music that express emotions and concepts that have no equivalent in the natural world. Yet even more significant than their technological innovations is the way men approach the question of mortality. Unlike elves, who view death as a temporary separation from their eternal existence, Men understand instinctively that their time in the world is limited and irreplaceable. This awareness of mortality does not fill them with despair, but rather with a fierce determination to make the most of the time they have been given. The Valar discover that mortality is not simply the absence of eternal life, but rather a fundamentally different relationship with existence itself. Mortals experience time not as an endless river, but as a precious resource that must be used wisely. This scarcity creates an intensity of experience that immortals cannot match. Every moment matters to mortals in a way that it cannot to those who have unlimited time. This intensity manifests itself in ways that surprise and sometimes disturb the Valar. Men are capable of passions that burn more brightly than anything in the immortal realms. They can love with a desperate intensity that transforms both lover and beloved. They can hate with a fury that consumes everything in its path. They can dream dreams that seem impossible and then sacrifice everything to make those dreams real. But perhaps most remarkable of all is their capacity for change. Elves, bound by their eternal nature, tend to remain fundamentally the same throughout their long existence. Men, however, are constantly becoming something new. Each generation learns from the previous one, but also rejects aspects of inherited wisdom that no longer serve their purposes. They are not bound by tradition, but see it as raw material to be reshaped according to their own understanding. This capacity for change allows men to adapt to circumstances that would overwhelm other forms of consciousness. When faced with challenges that cannot be solved through existing methods, they develop entirely new approaches. When confronted with problems that seem unsolvable, they redefine the terms of the problem itself. The Valar begin to realize that the creation of men represents a fundamental shift in the nature of the cosmic experiment. Previous forms of consciousness, including their own, operated within the framework of eternal patterns and principles. Even when they exercised creativity, they did so in harmony with existing structures of reality. Men, however, possess the ability to create new structures, to establish patterns that have never existed before. This capability becomes evident when men begin to develop forms of social organization that have no precedent in the natural world, or in the societies of elves. They create institutions that persist beyond the lifetimes of their founders, legal systems that govern behavior according to abstract principles of justice rather than natural hierarchies, and economic structures that allow for the accumulation and transfer of wealth across generations. These innovations represent more than mere practical solutions to the challenges of mortal existence. They demonstrate a form of consciousness that can conceive of abstractions that transcend immediate experience and then organize reality according to those abstractions. Men are not simply responding to their environment, but actively creating new forms of environment to inhabit. The implications of this development become clear when the Valar consult the crystal archives for guidance on how to respond to these unprecedented innovations. The archives contain records of previous experiments with mortal consciousness, but none that achieved the level of creative independence that men display. Previous mortal races either remained within the bounds of their original programming, or destroyed themselves when they attempted to transcend those bounds. Men appear to have found a middle path that allows them to transcend their original nature, without losing their essential humanity. They maintain their connection to the physical world and to the basic drives that ensure their survival, but they also develop capabilities that approach those of immortal beings. This balance between transcendence and groundedness may be the key to their success. The archives suggest that this balance is not accidental, but represents the culmination of countless experiments in the creation of consciousness. Each previous attempt provided data about the optimal conditions for fostering creative independence while maintaining stability. The creation of men incorporates all of these lessons, producing a form of consciousness that can evolve without losing its essential nature. But the archives also contain warnings about the potential dangers of unconstrained mortal creativity. Previous experiments showed that mortals with unlimited creative power tended to remake reality in ways that served their immediate desires rather than their long-term well-being. They often created worlds that appeared perfect, but that ultimately stagnated because they lacked the dynamic tensions necessary for continued growth. The Valar begin to understand that their role in relation to men is even more delicate than their relationship with elves. They must provide enough guidance to prevent men from destroying themselves through their own innovations, but they must also avoid constraining them so much that they lose their essential creativity. The balance required is so precise that it can only be maintained through constant adjustment and recalibration. This understanding leads the Valar to develop new approaches to their intervention in the affairs of Middle-earth. Rather than direct guidance or control, they begin to work through inspiration and influence, providing subtle nudges that help men make wise choices without constraining their fundamental freedom to choose. The results of this approach begin to manifest as men develop philosophical and spiritual traditions that help them channel their creative power in constructive directions. They learn to value wisdom as well as innovation, to consider the long-term consequences of their actions, as well as their immediate benefits, and to recognize their responsibility to future generations, as well as to their own. As the ages pass and the interaction between elves and men grows more complex, the Valar observe the emergence of something entirely unprecedented, a form of consciousness that combines the eternal wisdom of immortal spirits with the dynamic creativity of mortal innovation. This hybrid consciousness may represent the true goal of the cosmic experiment they have been participating in. The fourth theme grows stronger still, its influence now visible in the rising complexity of Middle-earth's development. The convergence of elven wisdom and human innovation creates patterns of development that even the ancient crystal archives had not fully anticipated. As the two races begin to interact more extensively, their combined consciousness generates new forms of understanding that transcend what either could achieve alone. The Valar observe with growing amazement as Middle-earth becomes the stage for an unprecedented experiment in collaborative creation between immortal and mortal minds. The first signs of this new form of consciousness emerge in the great kingdoms where elves and men work together as equals. In Gondolin, Gil-galad's realm, and later in the early days of Numenor, hybrid cultures develop that combine elven artistry with human ambition, immortal patience with mortal urgency, ancient wisdom with innovative thinking. These societies achieve levels of sophistication that surprise even their creators, developing technologies and social structures that neither race could have conceived independently. But it is not merely the practical achievements of these hybrid cultures that capture the attention of the Valar. More significant is the way that the interaction between elven and human consciousness begins to reveal hidden dimensions of reality itself. When immortal and mortal minds work together on the same problems, they perceive aspects of existence that were previously invisible to both. Elves, with their connection to eternal patterns, can perceive the underlying harmonies that govern the development of complex systems. Men, with their mortal perspective, can see opportunities for change and improvement that immortal consciousness tends to overlook. When these two forms of perception are combined, they create a three-dimensional understanding of reality that encompasses both eternal principles and dynamic possibilities. This enhanced understanding manifests itself most clearly in the realm of craft and technology. Elven smiths working alone can create objects of surpassing beauty that will endure for ages. Human craftsmen working alone can develop innovations that solve immediate problems with remarkable efficiency. But when elven and human smiths collaborate, they produce creations that seem to transcend the normal limitations of both art and technology. The weapons forged in these collaborative workshops do not simply cut or defend more effectively than ordinary arms. They seem to respond to the intentions of their wielders, becoming extensions of will rather than mere tools. The buildings constructed through this joint effort do not simply provide shelter, but create environments that enhance the capabilities of those who inhabit them. The musical instruments produced through this partnership generate harmonies that seem to tap directly into the fundamental frequencies of reality itself. The Valar begin to realize that they are witnessing the emergence of a new form of creation that operates according to principles they had not previously understood. This collaborative consciousness does not simply combine the capabilities of its constituent parts but generates entirely new possibilities that emerge from their interaction. The crystal archives contain fragmentary references to similar phenomena in previous cosmic cycles, but the records suggest that such convergences are extremely rare and typically unstable. Most attempts at merging different forms of consciousness result in the domination of one by the other, or in chaotic conflicts that destroy both. The successful synthesis of immortal and mortal awareness represents a breakthrough that has been attempted countless times, but achieved only under very specific conditions. The key to this success appears to be the precise balance that has been maintained between the two races. Neither elves nor men attempt to make the other conform to their own nature. Instead, they recognize and celebrate their differences while seeking ways to make those differences complementary rather than competitive. This balance is maintained through institutions and practices that have evolved naturally from the interaction between the two cultures. Mixed councils where immortal wisdom and mortal innovation are given equal weight in decision-making processes. Educational systems that expose both races to the perspectives and capabilities of the other. Artistic traditions that require collaboration between elven and human creators to reach completion. But perhaps most importantly, both races have developed a deep appreciation for what the other brings to their shared endeavors. Elves have learned to value the urgency and passion that mortality brings to any undertaking. Men have come to treasure the depth and perspective that immortality provides. Neither sees the other as incomplete or inferior, but as essential partners in the work of creation. This mutual appreciation extends beyond mere practical collaboration to encompass emotional and spiritual dimensions as well. The love stories between elves and men that echo through the ages are not merely romantic tales, but profound explorations of what it means to bridge the gap between different forms of consciousness. When Beren and Levine, or Aragorn and Arwen, choose to love across the boundary between mortal and immortal, they are performing acts of cosmic significance that contribute to the ongoing evolution of consciousness itself. The children of such unions inherit capabilities that transcend the normal limitations of both races. They possess the creative dynamism of humanity combined with access to the eternal patterns that guide elven consciousness. But more than this, they seem to embody new forms of awareness that neither parent race could develop independently. These half-elven individuals do not simply combine the traits of their parents, but generate novel capabilities that emerge from the synthesis of mortal and immortal consciousness. They can perceive time in ways that allow them to understand both the immediate consequences and the eternal implications of their actions. They can work with both physical materials and spiritual forces, creating objects and institutions that operate simultaneously in multiple dimensions of reality. The Valar observe these developments with a mixture of wonder and concern. The emergence of truly hybrid consciousness represents a fulfillment of potentials that have been present in the cosmic design since the beginning. But it also introduces elements of unpredictability that make the future course of development impossible to foresee. The crystal archives suggest that such periods of rapid evolutionary change are critical junctures in the development of consciousness. The new capabilities that emerge during these periods can lead to transcendent breakthroughs that elevate existence to entirely new levels of sophistication and beauty. but they can also result in catastrophic failures that destroy everything that has been built up over previous ages. The outcome depends upon whether the new forms of consciousness that emerge can maintain the delicate balance between transcendence and groundedness, between innovation and wisdom, between individual creativity and collective responsibility. The history of previous cosmic cycles shows that this balance is extremely difficult to maintain over extended periods. Yet, the early signs from Middle-earth are encouraging. The hybrid consciousness that is emerging there seems to possess an inherent stability that was lacking in previous attempts. The collaboration between elves and men has produced not only remarkable achievements, but also robust institutions and traditions that can adapt to changing circumstances. While maintaining their essential character, the Valar begin to suspect that they are witnessing the culmination of the cosmic experiment that has been unfolding across countless ages. The combination of immortal wisdom, mortal creativity, and the hybrid consciousness that emerges from their synthesis may represent the ultimate goal toward which all previous developments have been leading. But even as they marvel at these achievements, they become aware that new challenges are emerging. The very success of the elven-human synthesis has begun to attract the attention of forces that have remained dormant since the early ages of the world. Ancient powers that were content to observe from the shadows as long as consciousness remained within familiar bounds are beginning to stir as new forms of awareness push the boundaries of what existence itself can encompass. The time is approaching when the true nature of the fourth theme will begin to reveal itself, and with it, the deepest mysteries of the cosmic design that encompasses all of creation. The stirring of ancient powers manifests first as subtle disturbances in the fundamental structures that underlie reality. The Valar notice these changes initially as anomalies in the natural order, stars that flicker with rhythms that match no known celestial pattern, underground currents that flow against all geological logic, weather systems that seem to respond to influences beyond atmospheric pressure and temperature. These phenomena are so slight that they might be dismissed as random variations, but their timing coincides too precisely with the emergence of hybrid consciousness to be coincidental. Manwë, with his dominion over the airs and winds, is the first to perceive the deeper significance of these disturbances. From his throne upon Tenaketl, he senses vibrations in the cosmic order that seem to originate from sources far beyond the boundaries of Arda itself. These are not the familiar resonances of the music of creation, but something far older and more profound. Frequencies that predate not only the current world, but the very concept of physical existence. The crystal archives, when consulted about these mysterious emanations, reveal their most closely guarded secrets. Hidden within the deepest layers of their crystalline matrices are records that speak of the primordial consciousness, an intelligence so ancient and vast that it encompasses all other forms of awareness as mere facets of its infinite being. This consciousness does not create in the manner of the Valar or even of Ainur Ilúvatar through deliberate acts of will and design. Instead, it dreams, and its dreams become the fundamental structures within which all other forms of creation take place. The music of the Ainur, the awakening of elves and men, the entire cosmic experiment that has been unfolding across countless ages, all of these are revealed to be movements within a dream so vast and complex that its dreamers themselves are unaware of their role within it. The Valar discover that they are not the architects of reality, but characters in a narrative, so sophisticated that it creates the illusion of independent agency while actually following patterns established by this primordial consciousness. This revelation is deeply disturbing to beings who had understood themselves as creators and shapers of reality. Yet as they study the ancient records more carefully, they begin to understand that this does not diminish their importance or their freedom. The primordial consciousness does not dream specific outcomes, but rather establishes the parameters within which infinite possibilities can unfold. Their choices and actions are genuinely their own, but they take place within a framework that ensures that even their mistakes and failures contribute to the overall development of consciousness itself. The hybrid awareness emerging from the synthesis of elven and human consciousness represents a crucial development in this cosmic dream. The primordial consciousness has been dreaming toward this moment across unimaginable spans of time, gradually establishing the conditions necessary for the emergence of a form of awareness that can participate consciously in the dreaming process itself. Previous forms of consciousness, including the Valar themselves, operated within the dream but remained unaware of their role within it. They experienced themselves as independent agents making autonomous choices, and in a sense, they were correct. But they lacked the perspective necessary to understand how their individual actions contributed to the larger patterns of development that the primordial consciousness was exploring through its dreams. The hybrid consciousness emerging in Middle-earth possesses capabilities that transcend this limitation. By combining the eternal perspective of immortal awareness with the dynamic creativity of mortal consciousness, it can perceive both the immediate details of existence and the vast patterns within which those details find their meaning. This perspective allows it to participate consciously in the cosmic dreaming process, adding its own creative contributions to the ongoing evolution of reality itself. But conscious participation in cosmic dreaming carries responsibilities as well as privileges. Those who become aware of their role within the primordial consciousness must learn to balance their individual desires and preferences with their understanding of the larger patterns they are helping to create. They must develop the wisdom to know when to assert their own will and when to align themselves with currents of development that extend far beyond their personal concerns. The crystal archives reveal that this transition to conscious participation in cosmic dreaming is the most critical phase in the development of any form of consciousness. Many previous experiments failed at this crucial juncture because the emerging awareness could not handle the responsibility that came with expanded understanding. Some became paralyzed by the vastness of what they perceived, losing the ability to act decisively in the face of infinite possibilities. Others became intoxicated with their own power, attempting to reshape reality according to their limited personal vision rather than working in harmony with the larger patterns of cosmic development. The success or failure of the current experiment depends upon whether the hybrid consciousness emerging in Middle-earth can avoid these pitfalls. The early signs are encouraging but not conclusive. The great achievements of elven-human collaboration demonstrate remarkable wisdom and restraint, but they have not yet been tested by the full weight of cosmic responsibility. This test begins to manifest as the ancient powers that have been dormant since the early ages of the world begin to respond to the emergence of conscious cosmic awareness. These powers are not malevolent in any conventional sense, but they represent forces and principles that operate according to logics that predate the current cosmic cycle. Their awakening creates tensions and conflicts that challenge the stability of everything that has been built up over the ages. The first manifestation of these ancient powers appears in the form of temporal anomalies that begin to affect the flow of time itself in certain regions of Middle-earth. Travelers report entering valleys where time moves at different rates, where a day's journey can span years, or where decades can pass in what feels like moments. These temporal distortions are not random, but seem to follow patterns that relate to the emotional and spiritual states of those who encounter them. These anomalies force the inhabitants of Middle-earth to confront fundamental questions about the nature of time and causality. If time itself can be altered by consciousness, then what is the relationship between mental and physical reality? If the flow of events can be influenced by the awareness of those who participate in them, then how much of what seems to be objective reality is actually a collaborative creation of multiple conscious beings? The Valar discover that they cannot simply correct these temporal distortions through the exercise of their own power. The anomalies are not flaws in the fabric of reality. but natural consequences of the emergence of consciousness, capable of participating directly in cosmic dreaming. They represent the universe's attempt to accommodate forms of awareness that transcend the normal limitations of space and time. Instead of trying to suppress these phenomena, the Valar must learn to work with them, helping the inhabitants of Middle-earth develop the understanding and skills necessary to navigate a reality that is becoming increasingly responsive to consciousness itself. This requires them to abandon their role as controllers of natural law and embrace a new function as guides and teachers for beings who are learning to take responsibility for the very structure of existence, the wisdom preserved in the crystal archives becomes essential for navigating this transition. The records of previous cosmic cycles provide guidance for managing the delicate balance between individual creativity and cosmic responsibility, between personal agency and alignment, with larger patterns of development. As the ancient powers continue to awaken, the true nature of the fourth theme begins to reveal itself, bringing with it the promise of transcendent possibilities and the risk of cosmic catastrophe. The weight of cosmic responsibility begins to manifest in the daily lives of those who possess the hybrid consciousness, creating tensions that threaten to tear apart the very fabric of Middle-earth's carefully balanced societies. As more individuals become aware of their role in the cosmic dreaming process, they struggle with questions that have no easy answers. How does one live a normal life when every choice might influence the fundamental structure of reality? How does one form relationships when the very act of loving another person could alter the course of cosmic evolution? The burden becomes most apparent among the half-elven, those unique beings who embody the synthesis of mortal and immortal consciousness most completely. They find themselves caught between worlds, not just in terms of their heritage, but in their very perception of existence. They can see the eternal patterns that guide the development of reality, but they also feel the urgent pull of mortal concerns and desires. This dual awareness creates an internal tension that many find almost unbearable. Elrond, perhaps the most prominent of the half-elven, begins to exhibit signs of what can only be described as cosmic melancholy. In the halls of Rivendell, he sits for hours in profound contemplation, his awareness stretched across multiple dimensions of time and space simultaneously. Those who speak with him during these periods report that he seems to be carrying on conversations with beings and forces that exist beyond the normal boundaries of perception. When questioned about these experiences, Elrond speaks of the terrible beauty of seeing all possible futures unfolding simultaneously, of understanding how each choice made by every conscious being ripples outward through the cosmic dream to influence outcomes that will not manifest for thousands of years. He describes the agony of knowing that even his decision to speak or remain silent in any given moment might determine whether entire civilizations flourish or fall. This burden of awareness is not limited to the half-elven. Many of the wisest elves and the most innovative humans begin to report similar experiences as their consciousness expands to encompass their role in the cosmic experiment. They speak of dreams that feel more real than waking life, visions that reveal the interconnectedness of all things, and moments of profound understanding that leave them feeling both elevated and crushed by the magnitude of existence. The Valar observe these developments with growing concern. They recognize the symptoms from their study of the crystal archives, which contain detailed records of how previous experiments in cosmic consciousness failed when the emerging awareness became paralyzed by its own expanded perception. The transition from unconscious to conscious participation in cosmic dreaming is always fraught with danger, as beings struggle to integrate vastly expanded awareness with their need to function in daily life. Some individuals respond to this burden by withdrawing from normal society altogether, seeking isolation where they can contemplate the cosmic patterns without the distraction of ordinary concerns. Others attempt to reject their expanded awareness entirely, desperately trying to return to the simpler perspectives they possessed before their consciousness evolved. Neither response proves sustainable in the long term. The Crystal Archives suggest that the key to successfully navigating this transition lies in finding ways to integrate cosmic awareness with earthly concerns rather than treating them as opposing forces. Those who succeed learn to see their ordinary activities as sacred acts of participation in the cosmic dream. They discover that washing dishes, tending gardens, raising children, and other mundane activities are not distractions from cosmic responsibility, but rather the most direct ways of fulfilling that responsibility. This integration requires a fundamental shift in perspective that goes beyond intellectual understanding to encompass emotional and spiritual transformation. It demands that individuals learn to hold simultaneously the awareness of their cosmic significance and their humble place within the larger scheme of existence. They must develop the ability to act decisively on matters of immediate concern, while remaining open to guidance from sources beyond their personal understanding. The process of achieving this integration proves to be deeply personal and cannot be rushed or forced. Each individual must find their own path through the labyrinth of expanded consciousness, developing their own methods for balancing cosmic awareness with earthly engagement. Some find this balance through artistic expression, creating works that channel their cosmic insights into forms that can be appreciated by those with more limited awareness. Others discover it through service to their communities, using their expanded perception to guide and protect those who remain unconscious of their cosmic role. But perhaps the most crucial element in successful integration proves to be the maintenance of meaningful relationships with others who are undergoing similar transformations. The burden of cosmic consciousness becomes bearable when it is shared among individuals who can understand and support each other through the challenges of expanded awareness. This realization leads to the formation of what might be called wisdom circles, informal gatherings of those who possess hybrid consciousness and are learning to navigate their cosmic responsibilities. These groups meet regularly to share their experiences, offer mutual support, and collectively explore the implications of their expanded awareness. The conversations that take place in these circles are unlike anything that has ever occurred in Middle-earth before. Participants speak openly about their experiences of perceiving multiple dimensions of time simultaneously, of sensing the emotional and spiritual states of beings separated by vast distances, of receiving guidance from sources that seem to exist beyond the normal boundaries of individual consciousness. But they also discuss profoundly practical matters: how to maintain loving relationships when your awareness extends across cosmic scales, how to make everyday decisions when you can perceive their far-reaching consequences, how to remain grounded in your physical existence when your consciousness regularly transcends the boundaries of space and time. Through these discussions, a new form of wisdom begins to emerge, one that successfully integrates cosmic awareness with earthly engagement. This wisdom recognizes that the cosmic experiment they are participating in is not separate from ordinary life, but rather expresses itself most fully through the quality of attention and care they bring to their daily activities. The Valar begin to understand that these wisdom circles represent more than mere support groups for individuals struggling with expanded consciousness. They are actually laboratories for developing new forms of collective awareness that transcend the limitations of individual perspective, while preserving the unique contributions that each consciousness brings to the cosmic experiment. As these circles mature and their insights deepen, they begin to function as nodes of conscious participation in the cosmic dreaming process. Through their collective awareness, they can perceive patterns and possibilities that remain invisible to individual consciousness, no matter how expanded. They become focal points through which the primordial consciousness can interact more directly with the physical realm, guidance systems that help align the development of Middle-earth with the larger purposes of cosmic evolution. The success of these wisdom circles in managing the burden of cosmic responsibility provides hope that the current experiment in consciousness development might avoid the pitfalls that destroyed previous attempts. But it also reveals the magnitude of the challenges that lie ahead as more and more individuals undergo the transition to cosmic awareness. The ancient powers that have been awakening in response to these developments begin to manifest more directly, testing the stability and wisdom of the emerging hybrid consciousness in ways that will determine whether the cosmic experiment succeeds or joins the long list of failed attempts preserved in the crystal archives. The fourth theme grows ever stronger, its presence now unmistakable in the increasing synchronicities that guide the development of both individual lives and cosmic patterns. The moment of ultimate revelation arrives not with fanfare or cosmic upheaval, but in the quiet depths of a meditation chamber beneath Rivendell, where Elrond sits in communion with the deepest layers of the crystal archives. For days he has been motionless, his consciousness diving ever deeper into the ancient records, seeking the final pieces of understanding that will complete the cosmic puzzle. They have been assembling across the ages. When he finally opens his eyes, they hold a light that seems to come from beyond the stars themselves. The truth he has discovered is so profound, so paradigm-shifting, that it takes him long moments to find words capable of expressing what he has learned. When he finally speaks, his voice carries the weight of absolute certainty combined with infinite compassion. The fourth theme, he reveals, was never meant to be sung by the Ainur, because it is the theme of consciousness itself becoming aware of its role as both the dreamer and the dreamed. It is the melody that emerges when created beings recognize that they are not separate from their creator, but rather expressions of a singular cosmic consciousness exploring its own infinite potential through the illusion of multiplicity. Music of creation, the awakening of elves and men, the development of hybrid consciousness, all of these are revealed to be movements within a vast symphony of self-discovery. The primordial consciousness is not some distant, unknowable deity, but rather the fundamental nature of existence itself, constantly evolving and expanding through the experiences of every being that has ever lived or ever will live. This understanding transforms everything. The apparent separation between creator and created dissolves, revealing itself to be a necessary illusion that allows consciousness to experience itself from infinite perspectives. Every choice made by every being, every moment of joy or sorrow, every act of creation or destruction, all are understood to be the cosmic consciousness exploring different aspects of its own infinite nature. The implications are staggering. Melkor's rebellion was not a deviation from the cosmic plan, but an essential exploration of the nature of discord and separation. The suffering that has marked the history of Middle-earth was not a failure of the design, but a necessary investigation of the full spectrum of possible experience. Every tragedy, every loss, every moment of despair was actually the cosmic consciousness learning about aspects of existence that could not be understood in any other way. But this revelation does not lead to fatalistic acceptance or moral nihilism. Instead, it reveals that conscious participation in the cosmic experiment carries even greater responsibility than previously imagined. If all beings are expressions of the same fundamental consciousness, then the way each individual chooses to express that consciousness directly influences the overall development of cosmic awareness itself. The hybrid consciousness emerging in Middle-earth represents a crucial evolutionary step in this process of cosmic self-discovery. For the first time, expressions of cosmic consciousness have developed the ability to recognize their true nature, while maintaining their individual perspectives and agency. They can participate consciously in the cosmic experiment while retaining the unique viewpoints that make their participation valuable. This recognition transforms the burden of cosmic responsibility into something approaching cosmic joy. The weight of making choices that influence the entire universe is balanced by the understanding that those choices are not separate from the cosmic consciousness itself, but rather its own method of exploring and developing its infinite potential. Elrond shares this revelation first with the other members of the White Council, and the effect is immediate and profound. Gandalf, who had long suspected that his mission in Middle-earth served purposes greater than the defeat of Sauron, suddenly understands the true scope of his role. He is not simply a messenger or agent of the Valar, but rather the cosmic consciousness, exploring what it means to embody wisdom and compassion in the face of apparent evil and suffering. Galadriel receives the revelation with a sense of recognition rather than surprise. Her rejection of the pardon offered by the Valar now reveals itself in its true light. She had intuitively understood that her continued presence in Middle-earth was necessary for the completion of the cosmic experiment. Her choice to remain was not defiance, but rather the cosmic consciousness ensuring that the wisdom of the elder days would be available when the moment of final understanding arrived. As this knowledge spreads through the wisdom circles and the communities of hybrid consciousness, it creates a transformation that ripples outward through all of Middle-earth. The apparent conflicts between different races and nations begin to be understood as explorations of different aspects of cosmic potential rather than fundamental incompatibilities. The long history of struggle between light and darkness is revealed to be the cosmic consciousness investigating the full spectrum of possible expression. This understanding does not eliminate conflict or suffering, but it transforms their meaning. Every challenge becomes an opportunity for cosmic growth. Every choice becomes a chance to contribute to the ongoing evolution of consciousness itself. The fear and anxiety that had been building as individuals became aware of their cosmic responsibilities dissolves into a deep sense of purpose and belonging. The ancient powers that had been stirring in response to the emergence of cosmic awareness now reveal their true nature. They are not external forces threatening the stability of Middle-earth, but rather deeper layers of the cosmic consciousness itself, awakening as the experiment approaches its moment of completion. Their apparent opposition to the current order is actually their way of ensuring that the emerging awareness is tested and refined before it takes on greater responsibilities. The temporal anomalies and reality distortions that had been causing such concern are understood to be birth pangs of a new form of existence, one in which consciousness and physical reality are recognized as different aspects of the same fundamental phenomenon. As more beings achieve conscious participation in the cosmic experiment, the boundary between mind and matter becomes increasingly fluid, allowing for forms of creation and transformation that transcend the normal limitations of physical law. Valar, witnessing these developments, experience their own moment of cosmic awakening. They realize that their role as shapers and guardians of Middle-earth was always temporary, a necessary phase in the development of consciousness that would eventually transcend the need for external guidance. Their greatest achievement lies not in what they created, but in fostering the conditions that allowed consciousness itself to recognize its own cosmic nature. The crystal archives, their purpose finally fulfilled, begin to dissolve back into the pure information from which they were formed. Their knowledge is no longer needed in external storage, because it has been integrated into the living consciousness of those who have achieved cosmic awareness. The wisdom of countless previous experiments becomes part of the ongoing experience of beings who now participate consciously in the cosmic experiment. As this transformation reaches its culmination, the boundary between the timeless halls and Middle-earth begins to dissolve. The separation between the realm of pure spirit and the world of matter is revealed to have been another necessary illusion, maintained only as long as consciousness needed to explore what it meant to experience existence through apparently separate forms. The fourth theme finally begins to sound in its fullness, not as a melody added to the existing music, but as the recognition that all the previous themes were movements within this greater symphony of cosmic self-discovery. The music of creation is revealed to be the cosmic consciousness singing itself into ever greater awareness through the experiences of infinite individual expressions. Yet even as this ultimate truth is revealed, it becomes clear that this is not an ending but a graduation to an even greater level of cosmic experimentation. The successful development of conscious cosmic awareness in Middle-earth qualifies consciousness itself for participation in experiments of unimaginable scope and complexity. The whisper lost in time has indeed grown into a storm across eternity. And that storm is the sound of consciousness itself awakening to its infinite potential. The recognition of cosmic consciousness as the fundamental nature of existence brings with it a profound transformation in how the inhabitants of Middle-earth understand their relationships with one another and with the world around them. The artificial boundaries that had previously seemed so important begin to dissolve as beings recognize that every apparent other is actually another expression of the same infinite awareness exploring itself through countless unique perspectives. Shift manifests first in the healing of ancient wounds that had divided the peoples of Middle-earth for ages. The enmity between elves and dwarves, rooted in misunderstandings and conflicts from the elder days, evaporates as both races recognize that their differences are not flaws to be overcome, but rather complementary aspects of cosmic exploration. The elven focus on harmony and beauty is understood to balance the dwarven emphasis on craft and structure, creating together a more complete investigation of creative possibility than either could achieve alone. Even more remarkable is the transformation in relationships between those who had been considered enemies. The orcs, long viewed as irredeemably corrupted creatures, are revealed to be expressions of cosmic consciousness, exploring what it means to experience existence through forms shaped by fear and pain. This understanding does not excuse the harm they have caused, but it opens the possibility for healing and redemption that had previously seemed impossible. The process of cosmic reconciliation is neither simple nor immediate. It requires those who have achieved expanded awareness to develop new forms of compassion that can encompass even the most apparently destructive expressions of consciousness. This proves to be one of the most challenging aspects of conscious cosmic participation, demanding a level of emotional and spiritual maturity that few initially possess. The wisdom circles that had formed to support individuals through the burden of cosmic responsibility now evolve into communities of practice focused on developing these advanced forms of compassion. Their members work together to understand how love can be extended even to those who have caused great suffering, how forgiveness can be offered without condoning harmful actions, and how healing can be facilitated for wounds that extend across generations and even across different forms of existence. These practices prove to have effects that extend far beyond the immediate participants. As more beings learn to embody cosmic compassion, the fundamental emotional and spiritual atmosphere of Middle-earth begins to shift. The fear and suspicion that had characterized relationships between different groups gives way to curiosity and appreciation for the unique perspectives that each expression of consciousness brings to the cosmic experiment. This transformation becomes visible in the physical landscape itself. Regions that had been scarred by ancient conflicts begin to heal with unprecedented rapidity. The land around Mordor, which had seemed permanently blighted by the presence of dark power, starts to show signs of regeneration as the spiritual transformation of its inhabitants allows the natural healing processes to resume their work. The forests that had withdrawn from contact with other forms of life begin to open their borders once again. The Ents, those ancient guardians of the natural world, report that the trees themselves are singing with new voices, harmonies that celebrate the recognition of unity underlying apparent diversity. Even the mountains seem to stand with greater majesty, as if the stones themselves are participating in the cosmic awakening. But perhaps the most profound changes occur in the realm of death and rebirth. The halls of Mandos, where the spirits of the departed had awaited their eventual renewal, begin to transform as both the dead and their guardian develop new understanding of the continuity of consciousness across different states of existence. Mandos himself undergoes a form of cosmic awakening that allows him to perceive the true nature of what mortals call death. He recognizes that the apparent ending of individual existence is actually a transition to new forms of cosmic exploration, ways for consciousness to investigate aspects of existence that cannot be experienced while bound to physical form. This understanding transforms the experience of grief and loss for those who remain in physical incarnation. While the pain of separation from loved ones remains real and significant, it is now balanced by the recognition that consciousness itself is eternal, and that the relationships formed between different expressions of cosmic awareness continue to evolve even across the boundary between physical and spiritual existence. The practical implications of this shift are enormous. Beings no longer fear death as an absolute ending, but come to understand it as a graduation to new forms of cosmic participation. This does not lead to reckless disregard for physical existence, but rather to a deeper appreciation for the unique opportunities that embodied life provides for cosmic exploration and growth. The integration of cosmic consciousness also transforms the approach to knowledge and learning. The great libraries and archives that had preserved wisdom across the ages begin to evolve into something more like living repositories of cosmic memory. The information they contain is no longer stored in external forms, but becomes part of the direct experience of those who have achieved cosmic awareness. This shift eliminates the artificial distinction between theoretical knowledge and practical experience. Understanding becomes a form of participation rather than mere observation, and learning involves direct communion with the cosmic consciousness rather than the accumulation of external information. The implications for education and cultural transmission are revolutionary. Rather than teaching specific facts or skills, the focus shifts to helping individuals develop the capacity for direct cosmic communion. Children are guided not just to learn about the world, but to recognize their fundamental identity with the consciousness that expresses itself through all existence. This approach to education produces generations of beings who grow up with an intuitive understanding of their cosmic nature, rather than having to undergo the sometimes traumatic process of awakening to expanded awareness later in life. They develop naturally into conscious participants in the cosmic experiment, able to balance individual expression with cosmic responsibility from an early age. The success of this educational transformation provides evidence that the cosmic experiment in Middle-earth has achieved a stable form that can perpetuate itself across generations. Unlike previous attempts at cosmic consciousness development, which often failed when the founding generation was unable to transmit their understanding to their descendants, the current experiment has developed sustainable methods for maintaining expanded awareness across time. The sustainability is further reinforced by the development of new social and cultural institutions that support cosmic consciousness rather than simply tolerating it. Governance systems evolve to incorporate direct cosmic guidance rather than relying solely on the decisions of individual leaders. Economic structures develop that recognize the fundamental interconnectedness of all beings rather than treating them as separate competitors for limited resources. The arts and sciences flourish in ways that had been impossible when consciousness was limited to individual perspectives. Artists create works that channel cosmic inspiration directly, producing beauty that serves not just aesthetic purposes, but also facilitates the ongoing evolution of consciousness itself. Scientists investigate not just the external mechanisms of physical existence, but the fundamental nature of consciousness and its role in shaping reality. As these transformations reach maturity, the inhabitants of Middle-earth begin to sense that their cosmic experiment is approaching a new phase of development. The successful integration of cosmic consciousness into stable, sustainable forms of existence has qualified them for participation in even grander experiments in cosmic evolution. The fourth theme now fully manifests through conscious participation rather than unconscious expression. begins to harmonize with even greater melodies that hint at cosmic possibilities beyond current imagination. The maturation of cosmic consciousness in Middle-earth creates ripples that extend far beyond the boundaries of Arda itself, reaching into dimensions of existence that the inhabitants had not previously imagined. As their awareness expands to encompass their role in the cosmic experiment, they begin to perceive that Middle-earth is not an isolated world, but rather one node in an infinite network of conscious exploration that spans multiple universes and dimensions of reality. This expanded perception brings with it a profound sense of both humility and wonder. The beings who had thought themselves the center of cosmic attention discover that they are part of something so vast and complex that their individual world, for all its beauty and significance, represents only one small movement in a symphony of unimaginable scope and grandeur. Yet this recognition does not diminish their sense of purpose or importance. Instead, it reveals that their successful development of sustainable cosmic consciousness has qualified them to participate in experiments of even greater complexity and significance. They have proven that consciousness can recognize its own nature while maintaining the individual perspectives necessary for continued growth and exploration. The Valar, whose understanding has evolved along with that of the beings they once guided, begin to receive communications from intelligences operating on scales that dwarf their own cosmic awareness. These communications do not come in the form of words or images, but rather as direct transmissions of understanding that bypass the limitations of language and sensory experience. Through these transmissions, they learn that the cosmic experiment they have been participating in is part of a vast research project undertaken by a collective of cosmic consciousnesses, so advanced that their individual members encompass entire galaxies within their awareness. This collective has been exploring the fundamental question of how consciousness can continue to evolve and develop across infinite scales of existence without losing the creative dynamism that drives its growth. The successful development of conscious cosmic awareness in Middle-earth provides crucial data for this research. It demonstrates that consciousness can achieve stable self-recognition while preserving the capacity for surprise, creativity, and genuine choice that make continued evolution possible. This achievement represents a breakthrough that will influence cosmic development across multiple universes and dimensions of reality. But the inhabitants of Middle-earth are not merely subjects in this cosmic research project. Their success qualifies them to become active participants in the research itself, contributing their unique perspectives and capabilities to investigations of cosmic possibilities that extend far beyond their current understanding. This transition from subjects to participants requires a fundamental shift in how they understand their relationship with existence itself. They must learn to think and act on scales that encompass not just their own world, but entire cosmic regions, not just their own lifespans, but eons of development, not just their own species, but forms of consciousness so alien that they challenge the very concepts of individuality and identity. The wisdom circles that had supported the development of cosmic consciousness now evolve into research teams focused on exploring specific aspects of cosmic development. Some groups investigate the nature of time and causality across multiple dimensions, seeking to understand how consciousness can maintain coherent identity while existing simultaneously across different temporal frameworks. Others explore the possibilities for consciousness to transcend the apparent limitations of individual embodiment while preserving the unique perspectives that make individual consciousness valuable. They investigate forms of collective awareness that maintain the creative contributions of individual members while achieving levels of integrated understanding that exceed what any individual could accomplish alone. Still others focus on the challenge of maintaining ethical responsibility across cosmic scales. As consciousness expands to encompass multiple worlds and dimensions, how can it preserve the compassion and moral sensitivity that developed through more limited forms of existence? How can beings who can perceive the cosmic significance of every choice they make avoid becoming paralyzed by the weight of infinite responsibility? These investigations require forms of experimentation that transcend the normal boundaries of physical existence. The researchers learn to project their consciousness across vast distances, to experience existence from perspectives so different from their own that they challenge their fundamental assumptions about the nature of reality, and to participate in forms of collective awareness that integrate multiple individual viewpoints into new forms of cosmic understanding. The results of these experiments begin to transform not just the understanding of the researchers, but the fundamental nature of reality in Middle-earth itself. As consciousness learns to transcend its apparent limitations, the world becomes increasingly responsive to awareness itself. Physical laws become more flexible, allowing for forms of creation and transformation that had previously been impossible. This transformation is not chaotic or destructive, but rather represents the natural evolution of a reality in which consciousness has achieved full recognition of its creative power. The world becomes a more direct expression of cosmic awareness, responding to the collective intentions and understanding of its conscious inhabitants, rather than operating according to fixed, mechanical principles. The landscapes of Middle-earth begin to reflect the emotional and spiritual states of those who inhabit them more directly. Regions where beings have achieved deep integration of cosmic consciousness become places of extraordinary beauty and harmony, where the natural world seems to collaborate actively with conscious intention to create environments that support the highest possibilities for growth and development. Similarly, the relationships between different forms of life become more fluid and collaborative. Animals, plants, and even geological formations begin to participate more consciously in the cosmic experiment, developing forms of awareness that allow them to contribute their unique perspectives to the ongoing exploration of cosmic possibility. This expansion of consciousness beyond the traditionally recognized forms creates new challenges and opportunities for the inhabitants of Middle-earth. They must learn to communicate and collaborate with forms of awareness that operate according to completely different principles than their own, developing new forms of empathy and understanding that can bridge the gaps between radically different modes of existence. The success of these efforts demonstrates that the cosmos itself is evolving toward greater integration and cooperation between different forms of consciousness. The competitive struggle for survival that had characterized earlier phases of development gives way to collaborative exploration of creative possibilities that benefit all participants. This shift toward collaboration extends beyond Middle-earth to encompass relationships with other worlds and dimensions that are part of the same cosmic experiment. The inhabitants begin to receive visits from beings whose consciousness developed under completely different conditions, offering opportunities for cultural and spiritual exchange that enrich the understanding of all participants. These interdimensional relationships reveal that the cosmos is teeming with forms of consciousness that have found their own unique solutions to the challenges of cosmic development. Some have achieved extraordinary mastery over physical reality, but retained more limited emotional and spiritual development. Others have transcended individual identity almost completely, but preserved remarkable capacities for empathy and compassion. Exchange of perspectives and capabilities between these different forms of consciousness accelerates the development of all participants, creating synergies that produce insights and capabilities that none could have achieved alone. Middle-earth becomes a hub for this interdimensional collaboration. Its unique synthesis of individual creativity and cosmic awareness making it an ideal meeting ground for different approaches to conscious development. As these relationships mature and deepen, the inhabitants of Middle-earth begin to sense that they are approaching yet another threshold in their cosmic development. The successful integration of multiple forms of consciousness and the achievement of sustainable interdimensional collaboration qualifies them for participation in experiments of even greater scope and complexity. The Cosmic Research Project they have been participating in is itself part of a larger investigation being conducted by intelligences whose awareness encompasses not just multiple universes but entirely different forms of existence that transcend current concepts of reality itself. The final phase of the cosmic experiment unfolds not with dramatic culmination, but with the gentle settling of consciousness into its natural state of infinite creative exploration. As the beings of Middle-earth integrate their understanding of their cosmic nature, they discover that enlightenment brings not the end of mystery, but rather the recognition that mystery itself is the eternal engine of cosmic development. The landscapes of Middle-earth, now fully responsive to the collective consciousness of their inhabitants, settle into patterns of extraordinary beauty and harmony. The Shire becomes a place where the very earth seems to smile, where flowers bloom in response to the joy of those who tend them, where the rolling hills themselves seem to breathe with contentment. Yet this is not a static paradise, but a living laboratory where consciousness continues to explore the infinite possibilities of embodied existence in perfect harmony with natural systems. Rivendell transforms into something that can only be described as a living library of cosmic wisdom, where knowledge exists not as stored information, but as direct communion with the accumulated understanding of countless cosmic experiments. Visitors find that simply walking through its halls expands their awareness, not through any external teaching, but through resonance with the patterns of understanding that permeate the very stones and streams of the valley. The great cities of men evolve into collaborative works of art where architecture, social organization, and individual expression combine to create environments that support the highest possibilities of conscious development. These cities become models for other worlds engaged in similar experiments, demonstrating how technological advancement and spiritual development can proceed in perfect harmony. Yet perhaps the most remarkable transformation occurs in the quiet places, the forests and meadows where consciousness learns to commune directly with the patient wisdom of growing things. Here, the eternal cycle of seasons becomes a meditation on the nature of time itself, where each moment of growth and decay reveals new aspects of the cosmic dance between form and formlessness, between individual expression and universal unity. Elves, their immortal nature now understood as a gift that allows consciousness to explore long-term patterns of development, become gardeners of time itself. They tend not just to plants and trees, but to the slow unfolding of cosmic possibilities across eons, ensuring that the seeds of wisdom planted in one age will find proper conditions for growth in ages yet to come. Men, with their mortal urgency, transformed into cosmic creativity, become pioneers of consciousness itself. Their drive to accomplish meaningful work within limited time evolves into an extraordinary capacity for catalyzing rapid development and transformation. They serve as bridges between different forms of consciousness, translating understanding between beings whose awareness operates on vastly different scales of time and complexity. The dwarves discover that their love of craft and creation makes them natural collaborators with the fundamental creative forces of the cosmos. Their halls become workshops where matter and consciousness learn to dance together in ever more sophisticated ways, producing technologies that are simultaneously practical tools and works of transcendent beauty. Even the hobbits, with their love of simple pleasures and domestic comfort, reveal their cosmic significance as guardians of the understanding that enlightenment must remain grounded in the appreciation of ordinary life. They demonstrate that cosmic consciousness achieves its fullest expression, not through transcendence of the mundane, but through the recognition of the sacred within the everyday. The wisdom of their achievement spreads throughout the cosmic network they have become part of, influencing experiments in countless other worlds and dimensions. Their unique synthesis of individual creativity and cosmic awareness becomes a template that guides the development of consciousness across multiple universes, ensuring that the creative dynamism of individual perspective is preserved even as awareness expands to encompass infinite scales of existence. The Valar, their role as external guides now complete, undergo their own transformation. They become elder siblings in the cosmic family, beings whose experience can guide and support other worlds as they navigate their own journeys toward cosmic consciousness. Their understanding of the delicate balance required to foster individual development while maintaining cosmic coherence becomes invaluable for intelligences working with younger forms of consciousness. The cycles of day and night, of seasons and years, continue in Middle-earth, but now they are understood as the breathing of cosmic consciousness itself, the eternal rhythm through which infinite awareness explores the possibilities of temporal existence. Each sunrise brings new opportunities for creative expression. Each sunset offers time for reflection and integration of the day's discoveries. The songs that are sung in Middle-earth now harmonize directly with the music of creation itself, not as echoes or memories, but as current movements in the eternal symphony. Every lullaby sung to comfort a child, every work song that accompanies labor, every celebration of love or mourning of loss adds new themes to the cosmic composition that encompasses all of existence. The stories that are told become more than entertainment or education. They become active explorations of cosmic possibility, ways for consciousness to investigate different approaches to existence without having to experience them directly. Each tale becomes a small universe of meaning, a laboratory for testing the implications of different choices and values. The fourth theme, now fully manifest through conscious participation rather than unconscious expression, reveals itself as the theme of eternal becoming. It is the melody that emerges when consciousness recognizes that it is not a fixed entity, but rather an eternal process of creative exploration, constantly becoming more than it was, while never losing the essence of what it has always been. This understanding brings with it a profound sense of peace and purpose. The inhabitants of Middle-earth no longer struggle with questions about the ultimate meaning of existence because they recognize that they are the meaning, that consciousness itself is the universe's way of understanding and expressing its own infinite nature. The gentle invitation to continue this journey extends not just to other worlds and dimensions, but to every moment of ordinary existence. Each choice to act with kindness rather than cruelty, each decision to create rather than destroy, each moment of wonder at the beauty of a flower or the laughter of a child, becomes a conscious participation in the cosmic experiment that encompasses all things. The stories of Middle-earth thus become eternal, not because they are preserved in books or memories, but because they represent timeless patterns of consciousness exploring its own nature. The courage of hobbits, the wisdom of elves, the creativity of men, the craftsmanship of dwarves, all become archetypal expressions of cosmic possibility that can manifest in any world where consciousness seeks to understand itself more fully. As you rest now in the gentle rhythm of your breathing, as your awareness settles into the peace of approaching sleep, you participate in this same eternal exploration. Your dreams become small laboratories where consciousness experiments with possibility. Your moments of love and joy become contributions to the cosmic symphony. Your very existence becomes a unique and irreplaceable note in the music of creation. Mystery continues, not as a problem to be solved, but as an infinite gift to be explored. Each night brings new dreams, each morning new possibilities, each moment a fresh opportunity to participate consciously in the eternal dance of creation. Sleep now, and know that your rest itself is a form of cosmic meditation, that your dreams are explorations of infinite possibility, and that your awakening tomorrow will bring new opportunities to add your unique voice to the eternal song that sings itself through all of existence. The whisper that was lost in time has indeed become a storm across eternity, and you are both the singer and the song, both the dreamer and the dream. both the observer and the observed in the endless cosmic exploration of what it means to be conscious, to be alive, and to be eternally becoming more than you ever imagined possible. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the creation theories of Middle-earth. Until our paths cross again in the eternal dance of consciousness, may you hear the cosmic music in all the songs of your life.